Man, ek is nou hartseer.
Good morning, colleagues. It's the 11th hour. It is great to see you here in person and to welcome you. Good morning, Takse Molweni Wamkelekile. This is our last staff assembly for the year, and it's great to welcome you all to the Adam Small Theatre for our second in-person meeting of the year. For those of you who are watching the stream from our satellite campuses, or as the Tygerberg colleagues would like to say, from the real main campus, welcome. Colleagues, we do have an interpreting service available in the hall here on my right-hand side. You can see the colleagues are seated there, so please go to them and get the equipment that you need. I share with you our program for the meeting. You will see it's not very extensive. We want to give enough time for you to engage with us and ask questions. Our rector, I just give opportunity to colleagues to walk in. Provim will be. Ons wil net so bietjie sagter kry. Let's going. Provim will be our first, and he will today focus on Respicay, looking back on 2022, and as you can expect also put the Kampepe report in context, and then we'll have opportunity for questions. And before you leave, we'll have another lucky draw where 10 of the more than 300 staff members who responded for today's event will receive a Mahdi shop voucher. Now that's exciting stuff. So, colleagues, warm up for that. Colleagues, the past year was challenging. and along the way we've lost dear ones again. I ask that we all observe a moment of silence and we think about everyone who has passed away among staff, students, family members. May they rest in peace, and may their family, friends, and colleagues find the strength to carry on. So let's be quiet for a moment. Thank you, colleagues. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Prof.
Thank you very much, Prof. Nico. It's a real privilege to speak to you this morning. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining. So as Prof. Nico said, this is our last staff assembly of the year. And then we have next week 13 graduation ceremonies. And then no more meetings. So I was happy to hear a buzz of excitement when you heard about the lucky draw. So you have to stay until the end to qualify for the lucky draw, and you also, I believe, had to have RSVP'd to be eligible for the lucky draw. And you heard what the prize is. It's a voucher for purchases at the Marty shop, and as you can see today, I come fully branded. I have the pin. I have the Marty's veldskoene on. All right. And you notice I also have socks on. I have the South African flag socks on because I felt compelled, and also I thought it was necessary, especially at this time over the last 2 days, that I should wear something in support of our democracy and our country. So, as Nico said, I really want to give you the opportunity to ask questions this morning. So I'm going to speak on the Kampepe, on 2022, looking back at 2022 and the Kampepe report, and to attempt to put that into context and our way forward dealing with this. So, but before I get to reflecting back on 2022, I want to mention that November, it is the 2nd of December today, but that November was National Disability Rights Awareness Month. And you see on this slide, you see depictions of the work also of our disability unit. And when the disability unit was established in 2007, there were less than 100 students with one or other disability. Now we have an excess of 600 students with one or more disabilities. And as many of these students have positive experiences at Stellenbosch University, we have become known by word of mouth as a campus that is increasingly inclusive of a range of disabilities. I also just wanted to make you aware of the outstanding work that our marketing advancement and communications people do. And the comms team did extremely well again at the MACE Awards. And Stellenbosch University took home 17 awards. 17 awards, most of any higher education institution. Well done. 2 gold awards for our annual integrated report and the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences COVID-19 Response Magazine. And also, as you can see here, a great story about one of our students, Kimberly Lucas. A few more staff successes, and I want to emphasize that there are many, many staff successes. But I did want to just point out these successes. Professor Guy Midgley was awarded an Ecologic Award, and this is really also indicative of the increasing accolades that are being bestowed on our School for Climate Studies. And then in the top right there, you see the thumbs up from our Maties Gemeenskapsdiens, Matie Community Service folk. And they finally integrated with Stellenbosch University's Division of Social Impact after an intensive consultation process that stretched over 2 years. And I really want to acknowledge the work these colleagues are doing. Their focus on engaged citizenship has for a number of years now been a cornerstone of the social impact mandate of the university. And MGD, they're an indispensable part of our social impact imperative. And then, bottom left, especially now at the time, I'm surprised they're not at the World Cup soccer in Qatar. So, what an exciting tournament, by the way. So, the Matie staff football team recently won the 2022 University Sports South Africa staff tournament in Makanda. And they're already looking forward to defending their title at next year's tournament. Quote, Ricardo Isaacs, Stellenbosch University staff football coordinator, said their win is due to hard work and their commitment to improving their football skills through training. And then just a shout out to Professor Ingrid Woolard, the Dean of the Faculty of Economic and Management Sciences at Stellenbosch University, and Professor Stan du Plessis, a former Dean of the same faculty and now our COO. They were among the 29 leading scholars and scientists inaugurated as members of the Academy of Science of South Africa at its annual awards ceremony in October 2022. So well done. But as I said, many other highlights. I'm not going to name them all, but I really want to tell you that we notice your efforts, we see your efforts, and we recognize the extra mile you go in moving our institution forward. Also, especially during this year, which was a post-pandemic year, shall I call it, and when we again returned to Stellenbosch University from the pandemic period as a residential university. So I think it would be fair to say it'll be hard to find anyone on our respective campuses who's not ready for a good break. And I think you all deserve this very much. So I wish you a good rest period. So recommendations from the staff survey as published recently in my management report, I refer to that on this slide. And to put this into context, we had staff surveys. We started this in 2017, we had it in 2019, and also in 2021, even though that was in the midst of the pandemic. And it reported and it highlighted some of these areas for improvement: the well-being and development of staff, the transformation of the institution, the recognition and appreciation for all staff, promotion opportunities for staff, and the issue of equal treatment of all staff, especially women and black-colored Indian and Asian staff. And some of these elements are also reflected in the Campepe report and its findings and some of its recommendations. So in terms of the recommendations from the staff survey in the 2021 and also following on from the other surveys, in February, so these findings have now been communicated in detail to all the university environments, and they need to, in their own specific context, put in place interventions for improvement. In February 2023, the environments will report to the Staff Culture and Climate Survey Steering Committee about these interventions that they have initiated, and then that will be followed by progress reports in October 2023, And the steering committee in turn will provide feedback to the institutional committee on staff health and well-being, as well as directorate. So we're following up on these recommendations. We want to institute them. We want to evaluate and monitor them, and we want to be accountable for the recommendations and following up on these recommendations. All right, some exciting news about, hopefully it's exciting news for the budget, especially at this time when financial constraints and financial sustainability is certainly a headache for many universities. So Council at its meeting on Monday approved the 2023 budget. I need to just mention that in that last bullet point, it's a rider. It's subject to confirmation of the expected government subsidy to Stellenbosch University for the coming year. But the main points are this. The key factors are that Council approved an increase in student fees by 8%, accommodation increases by 8.9%, and also a staff salary increase from the 1st of January 2023 by 6%. And then on the recommendation of the Remuneration Committee of Council, there was this was also a recommendation that was accepted enthusiastically so, in view of the cost of living increases that you've all experienced over the past period. And this is a once-off lump sum amount payment of 7,500 Rand for employees who are at post levels 9 to 19. And this is to assist with the significant increases in cost of living. So now on to some of the highlights of the year. And so that we're going to give you 10 highlights. So we can do a countdown in effect. So one is graduation success. So as I mentioned, next week is graduation ceremonies again. And we don't have the official figures yet for 2022, but we have no reason to expect that this will be also in the range of 9,000 qualifications of the year. Our PhDs in the range of 320, 330 or so for academic year 2022. Students are still writing exams. We don't yet quite have the official statistics, but phenomenal success, and it's really a testimony to your hard work in this regard, and I really want to thank you all for that. A significant contribution to human capital development in this country. So research, number 2. So South Africa, Stellenbosch University is clearly among the top 3 research-intensive universities in the country. And this is clear from the NRF's report on the round of ratings in terms of per capita and also in terms of total research output. And we now have a total of 20 A-rated researchers, and this is our highest number to date. 20 of them. And in the most recent round, there were 9 new A ratings. So we also currently have 68 research chairs, and in 2012, this number was 16. So a significant increase, and from a relatively low base, and this is my most recent mantra, is that for postdoctoral candidates, we've grown from a relatively low base from about 100 in 2012 that we now have almost 400, and I would very much like to increase this to 600 over the next 2 years. Number 3, applications. So if you were wondering whether there will still be students here next year, still at undergraduate and postgraduate level, so look at this and compare also to the 2022 applications, is upwards of 70,000 applications for next year for 5,500 spots. And in the one sense, this is incredibly encouraging that so many people, so many of our youth want to study at Stellenbosch, and that they seek also to continue their higher education studies. I know some of them also apply at many other institutions, but on the other hand, this is deeply disturbing that we can only take 5,500. What about the thousands of others, very, very deserving candidates, young people that we cannot accommodate at Stellenbosch University? And we also need to look at that in future. So we will have students, lots of undergraduate students, lots of postgraduate students, and who knows what the students are also going to bring us as extracurricular activities. Okay, number 4, the success of the School for Data Science and Computational Thinking. And this has been going now for 2-3 years, and it's been actually phenomenally successful. Both number 4 and 5, the School for Data Science, Computational Thinking, and number 5, the School for Climate Studies, was set up as cross-cutting, multidisciplinary structures that are cut across all the 10 different faculties. And for the School of Data Science and Computational Thinking, we were privileged to host a visit by President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, at our new Biomedical Research Institute earlier this year. They visited the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation. And this center is headed by Professor Tulio D'Oliveira, whom you know has received acclaim for his team's role in characterizing both the beta and the Omicron variants of the COVID-19 virus. And Professor D'Oliveira was recognized by Time magazine as a top 100 person in the world in 2021. He also received a significant award from the German government in form of the German Africa Award. It was presented by the German Chancellor 2 weeks ago. And multiple publications in prestigious journals such as Nature, Science, and Lancet. And number 5 is the School for Climate Studies at COP27. It's headed up by Professor Guy Midgley, as mentioned earlier. And the School for Climate Studies hosted the African Regional Forum on Climate, and also hosted the youth part of the COP27 COP27 forum in Cairo earlier last month. So it's playing a very significant role, especially in association with the other members of GAUC. So Stellenbosch University is a member of GAUC. We love acronyms. Global Alliance of Universities on Climate. It's Tsinghua University, Imperial University, 12-14 universities, MIT, UC Berkeley, Oxford, Cambridge, Sciences Po, National University of Singapore, Australian National University, University of Tokyo. Solid list of people we're working with, and Stellenbosch University is the only university on the African continent that was asked to join GAUC. And this gives us an opportunity to really leverage our ability to do research and research funding. I'm very proud of this one. The first Nobel in Africa symposium that took part in October. And this is the first time a Nobel symposium was done outside of Scandinavia. And it really focused on Africa's capacity to produce leading scholarship in science. It was hosted at STIAS, the Stellenbosch Institute of Advanced Study. And the first one was on physics, so quantum physics. This funding was obtained from the Wallenberg Foundation and also the university and the Nobel Foundation to do this for the next 8 to 10 years. The first one was on physics, the next one will be on chemistry next year, and then on physiology and medicine, specifically cardiovascular medicine, and that will be then followed by economics, to the delight of our COO, Professor Duplessis and Professor Woolard, and I believe specifically it is going to be on macroeconomics, Stan, so you will be even more happy about that. So, but we're really very proud of this. 200 researchers, both from the African continent and also across the globe, participated in this event. Nobel laureates, but that's not really the important thing. It's the interaction and exchange of research information, both in public sessions as well as in more closed sessions. There was an outstanding public lecture by Sir Michael Berry from the University of Bristol in our Jan Mouton Center that was well attended on the topic of the democratization of quantum physics. And if I had heard, and I urge you to go and listen to this lecture on YouTube, if I had heard this lecture when I was younger, age 17 or so, I think I would have changed my career. I would have done something more lofty than gastroenterology. Okay, 7, innovation. So in 2022, we had a renewed focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And as you can see here, a very impressive list of spin-out companies from our US enterprises, from our SU group of companies, 6 or 7 in the last year. And again, Stellenbosch University and its spin-off companies had the most patent applications in South Africa in 2020 with 136. And to put that into context, it's more than companies like Sasol and more than any other university in South Africa. Which of course brings us to number 8, which is rankings. I just said more than any other university in South Africa. So, and as you know, we're careful about rankings. We do know that these rankings, they're considered academic currency, but especially in our own context and the importance that we attached to our role in social impact, and not only teaching and learning and research. We know that these are definitely not the only barometer for success, but the Times Higher Education ranking system is the only one that we actually actively contribute to and that we actively participate in. So this was released on the 12th of October, the 2023 rankings, and we're maintain our spot in the band 250 to 300. And to put that into context, there are more than 30,000 universities in the world, so Stellenbosch University is in the top 1%. But I do want to draw your attention to bottom right here of this diagram, the 50.7, and that's the overall score. And if you look at the band 201 to 250, we are missing that by a whisker. So we have definitely moved up in the rankings. We're now undoubtedly, we've surpassed WITS last year, and we maintained that. There's a silly little university on the other side of the Liesbeek that I won't talk about, that's a little bit ahead of us. But what I'm especially pleased about is what you can see here. In terms of the indicators for these rankings, the 5 that you see there are the ones that we've improved in green, and where we've made the most impact there or increases there is in citations. So citations, it's the work that you all do, the research that you produce, the research that has local relevance, regional impact, but it's globally competitive. And you can see it's globally competitive because other people cite your work. And that has increased. So you can see the trajectory there, and that's significant. And this takes up about 30% of the total weighting. You can also see we are increasing in terms of research and also maintaining the score in terms of teaching. The decrease in industry income from what we see there, I think is directly attributable to the effects of the pandemic. So I think this is really excellent progress in this regard, but I do want to stress we need to be guarded about how we look at rankings. So according to this, and more recently, we also rank now in the world's top 150 institutions in the area of clinical and health, the top 200 in law, and the top 250 in education, the top 300 in arts and humanities. So it really bodes well for our continued emphasis on knowledge production. Number 9 in the highlights. Number 9 is Mati Sport. So we just heard the outstanding success of our staff football team being victorious in Makanda. So Mati Sport has also had a successful year. We hit the ground running. We returned to competitive sport. We scooped 6 university sports USAS gold medals. We won medals in netball, first time in a long time. Cricket, first time for quite a while. Hockey, rugby sevens. We were clearly cheated out of the 15s final against Tsakis, and I've also commissioned Rassie Erasmus to compile a video in that regard. But we've done outstandingly well in terms of Mati Sport, and the Woordfees and the University Choir. These are all examples of extracurricular activities that you've excelled on. So, the Campepe report. So, at first instance, you may ask, well, why do I put this as a highlight? And I truly believe this is a highlight. It stemmed from the events that you are all very familiar with, incidents of racism at our institution in May, and I then commissioned a respected former justice of the Constitutional Court, Justice Sisi Campepe, to do such an independent inquiry on my and on the leadership's behalf to gain information, to give us insights, to give us a deep dive into what is exactly going on the ground level here at the university, and to make findings and to make recommendations to the leadership, to me and the leadership. And this report was then handed to me late October. So I really urge staff to read the report in its entirety. Please read it in its entirety. I believe it's a balanced, it's a nuanced report. It's 184 pages long, double spacing, all right? Double spacing. Please read it. It's well done, it's well written, it's extremely uncomfortable reading this report. I did not enjoy reading the report, but I take it to heart. And we, as an institution, as a leadership, take the findings and the recommendations of the report to heart. I believe it allowed for a deep institutional reflection on not only our history, but also where we're standing at present, where we are at present, and it provides recommendations for how we can make things better. And that's why I called it a tipping point, an important tipping point for the university. It is a reflection on our transformation journey and also how far we still need to go on. And I want to emphasize, it is a transformation journey. It's not as if we had started on this journey just now. We have been on this journey. This university is not the place that I graduated at in 1983, that I finished my registrar training at in 1989, that I left then and then came back to in 2015 as Vice Chancellor, and I'm now in my 8th year as Vice Chancellor in 2022. This is not the same place now as what it was in 1989. It's not the same place that it was in 2015. But that is the nature of a transformation journey, of a change journey. In essence, by definition, it will and always should be incomplete. And as such, we are imperfect in that journey, but we're absolutely committed to that transformation journey. And I think if I can summarize, highlight what I took from the Campepe report, is that the university has, and she mentions, has a formidable transformation apparatus in place. There are lots of policies, documents, discussions, rules, regulations, etc., etc. So she calls that in her report transformation on paper. But what actually happens in transformation in practice? And that's the issue. That's what we've got to deal with, and that's what the lived experiences of many of our staff and students at the university actually give us a lens, give us an insight into. And as I've mentioned also, and you've seen the reports in the media, I don't necessarily agree with the entire report, but that's not the point. It is for us as an institution, as a university, to internalize, to embrace, to talk about, to read. Please read, unlike certain political parties who obviously don't read. So, and I'm grateful to the staff also who contributed to this process, and who also made themselves vulnerable to come forward and to talk about their experiences and their impressions. So we now have the findings. And also, more importantly, we have some of the recommendations. How are we going to deal with these recommendations? Is this just going to be another report, as is feared by many? Yeah, we've now given this some airtime. It allowed for some navel gazing, and I will just sweep it under the rug and to be visited again in 20 years' time, or when the next despicable incident occur on campus, as will. We need to realize that it will occur. We are a reflection of the wider South African community as well. So I think there are a series of recommendations in the report, and they speak to both structural, for example, the Equality Unit, the Transformation Office. But I think something that we do extremely well as a university is learning and teaching. That's at the core of our being. So we can, will, and should improve our training that we provide. The training that we provide to students, that we provide to staff, support staff, and academics. The training we provide to student leaders in the PRIM committee, student leaders on the SRC, residential education. These type of, we should look also at some of the aspects of institutional culture, how difficult that is as a concept to define and to really dig into. We should also, a recommendation from the report is looking at a mandatory shared humanities course module for first-year students. Now it's actually very interesting reading in the report, and also the expertise that she draws on when she makes this recommendation. There are pros to this, to a shared humanities course model. There are also cons to this. What one wouldn't want to do is that a shared humanities course module, that it becomes a tick box exercise, where people are forced to attend and where they're passive recipients and are not really engaging with what's being offered to them. And I've been quoted as saying very akin to life orientation at school. That's not what we want. So, but we have the expertise in-house. You guys are the experts, and you can all contribute to this to help us make this a success. So how have we engaged with this? We've engaged with senior management, with the deans, General Management Forum, a meeting, the Senate, and it was also discussed at Council this past Monday, where Council certainly robustly, vigorously discussed the report, and it was agreed to do this further as well in the future. So what are we going to do about this? And there was, and I'm going to put this in two ways, is that what the Directorate has agreed to following a recommendation, and I mentioned that we love acronyms, GALC, ERTLA, ARTLA, ICBC, and now we have another acronym, which is the CCCR, the Committee for the Coordination of the Commission's Recommendations, the CCCR. And I mention it specifically in conjunction with the ICBC, which was a contingency committee that was set up by the Rectorate to deal with the effects of the pandemic. And the reason why that was so successful is because it was a relatively flat structure. It was a flat structure that allowed for quick discussion, quick decision-making, agility, flexibility. And the recommendation is that such a CCCR will be set up with representation from members of the Institutional Transformation Committee, of a seniorized Institutional Transformation Committee, as well as some others, and that 3 thematic groups will be established. Because these recommendations now need to be looked at one by one in terms of their implications, and some of it will be short-term, some of it will be medium-term, some of it will be longer-term. For example, short-term, relatively quickly, issues in certain residences can be addressed. Longer-term, maybe addressing more nebulous or difficult topics or aspects such as institutional culture, and medium-term is what about and how to do and how to implement a meaningful shared humanities course. But these will be the 3 thematic work groups: student affairs, implementation of policy, and optimization of structures. Because Justice Kampepe showed us there are lots of structures, information on paper, lots of stuff. How to get that working better and working together better. And then thirdly, institutional culture. We are looking at getting an institutional coordinator or coordinators to drive and to oversee the rollout with very strong accountability to the Rectorate. And the Rectorate will consider the first inputs of these structures at very soon, and it may be even at our first or second Rectorate in 2023 to facilitate and craft the rollout of these action plans. But I want to stress something. This may say, okay, now we've established a CCCR and that's the end of it. That is not the end of it. It is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of it. This is the formalization of our approach to looking at these recommendations. But I want each of you to go and read this report. And we have urged at the different levels and different layers throughout the university to engage with the report, to talk about the report, to hear from everybody, to hear all the voices, to listen to people, and then understand. First to listen. And I want to commend structures and units throughout the university that have expressed their wish and have adopted the wish to really engage with this early on. And in this instance, I want to commend the Faculty of Engineering, that they are really engaging with this report and that they want to do that. But it has to be done at many, many different levels. We have to internalize the report. We own it. We asked for it. We want to have this view of ourselves, this honest view of ourselves. And we want to deal with it on this complex transformation journey that we're on. So I think you can see why, yes, one can say that the urination incidents and law dance incident, those were lowlights. But you can see why I'm so firmly believe that the Kampepe report is actually highlight number 10 of 2022. It really gives us an opportunity to move into the future confidently. So thank you very much. Herewith endeth the lesson. So I want to open up for questions, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some answers. And then we do have the lucky draw. Prof. Nico?
Thank you, Chair. I'll put the first question. Can I? Chair, Chair, the first question is one that we received beforehand, and it has to do with bullying at the institution. Our colleague asked specifically what management intends to do regarding bullying in 2023 and into the future. The colleague indicates that the colleague doesn't feel safe to speak within the specific environment about this question. The colleague asks what concrete steps will we take to deal with it, and also where grievances can be submitted. That's the core of the question, Chair, and I'll survey that where we talk about equality as a challenge, that bullying is part of unequal treatment that colleagues experience at the institution. So in addressing the survey recommendations and interventions, this is part of the process there. What I want to state in addition and confirm today is that there is a zero tolerance for bullying at the institution. Colleagues Deresh and I sent out a letter, you remember, in which we made that point very clearly. Then, Chairperson, we are increasing awareness training with regard to bullying. There are those who ask, but what does constitute bullying? And this awareness training will continue at the institution, and we will sharpen mechanisms that we already have in place. There are the mechanism of discipline, Chair, that is used especially then by employee relations. There's the mechanism of mediation that we use regularly, and the mechanism of relationship building. Chair, at the moment we are revising the anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. And one of the revisions would be that we will be more clear on what constitutes bullying, so that those policies also help us. But as you indicated earlier, it's crucial that we move from policy to practice. But we need clear policies also to ensure that we have thorough practices. The last part of the question, Chair, is how do we submit complaints and concerns? It is mostly done to the Equality Unit, Chair, who then investigates and make recommendations for either mediation, relationship building, or disciplinary measures. But we invite colleagues to submit to the Equality Unit, but you can also submit to colleagues at employee relations simultaneously. There are these two avenues that colleagues can explore, mainly the Equality Unit, but the colleagues at ER also increasingly indicate, and we will make that very clear also in communications and in the policy, that it can be to them as well for early noting at least, but the main point of submission is the equality, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nico. Any other questions? I've got one in the front right here, and from Theo Kinua, Prof. Kinua.
Thank you, Program Director, for giving us this briefing and this report and this presentation about the affairs of the university.
Sorry, could I ask you to just introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm going there. My name is Gabriel Marupula. I'm a staff member in the university. I'm in the Department of Chemistry and Polymer Science. I'm a support staff there. My question is around the issue of, I think Professor Nico raised the issue that the universities, we can use the human resource in terms of addressing and bringing solution through certain policies like disciplinary processes to address these issues. But my main question around that is that we as South Africans, as a country and the university, we chose a sort of a correctional justice system in terms of correcting our injustices that are happening, not a punitive justice system. So my question is, in terms of balancing in applying that correctional justice system, we have a perpetrator and a victim. How do we balance that? That is my first question. The second question is around what I think Professor Klute tried to address, and I think it came out in the Kapembe Commission, whereby you find that there's an issue of substance abuse among students, even staff members. Now, I know that Professor Klute came up with a sort of suggesting that we ban alcohol at some stage in the universities that contribute in these challenges that we face. So I want to know now, how do we do these things whereby we find that for some of us who enjoy maybe alcohol and behave very well, how do we strike a balance of addressing the issue of substance abuse? I'm talking across the board, including alcohol, which is legal and illegal, so that everyone can feel at home. Is that the way that we will go, or there's other ways that we can think of addressing such issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makuna. So Professor Quino is up next, and I'll come back to these questions. And maybe I can ask Professor Quino. He's a professor of law. He can talk to us about the balance of punitive and restorative justice as well.
Thank you, Chair. Rather not. I'll leave that to the university's clever lawyers. I'm not one of them. Chair, two quick questions. Let me start with the Campepe report, and I've read it multiple times. And as you say, it's uncomfortable reading. But I want to just highlight one point, and then ask your reflection on that based on what you've presented to us. So, in paragraph 420 of the report, Justice Campepe says, my conclusion, I quote, my conclusion is not that the university does not take these matters seriously, but that there is needless bureaucracy in its systems, which creates the wrong impression of its commitment to transformation, and I would add all matters. Continue quoting, Justice Campepe says, my advice to the university is that there is beauty and benefit in simplicity. And then paragraph 421, she goes on to say, a related problem that emerged frequently in the evidence was the university's obsession with hierarchy. And having read this report now a couple of times, if I were to say what is the golden thread running through the report, it is that one. The university's obsession with power and hierarchy. Now, if I apply that lens to what we heard today, let me just give you two examples where it tells me that we're not a learning institution. We're not taking a lesson. Firstly, how do we respond to the negative aspects of the wellness survey? We create a steering committee that's going to report to an institutional committee that's going to report to the rectorate. Now, if that's not an example of exactly what Justice Kompepe is talking about here, I don't know. How do we respond to the Kompepe report itself? We create a CCCR with multiple streams that's going to report who knows where. Again, if that's not an example of exactly what Justice Kompepe is talking about, I don't know what is. I think, Chair, that we should start by thinking much more fundamentally about how we as an institution function and stop creating more structures, more committees, more bodies. And that's fundamental. So I'd really like to hear your reflection. How can we learn from these comments that she's told us? Because I think a lot of us are highly frustrated by what we see in terms of just more bureaucracy, more committees, more reports, more processes. The second very quick question is, you've shown us the massive increase in applications to the university, and of course we're grateful that we still get applications. And then, of course, also the increases in numbers of students that we admit. I'd be very interested to see what is the staff growth figures alongside those. Because it seems to me that we get more applications, massively more, and we admit more students, we have more students. And yet, on both, all types of staff, support staff that must deal with all those applications and manage the processes and all of that goes with it, and academic staff that must teach the more students, we don't grow. In fact, my sense is we're going negative, but I don't have those figures. So I'll be very interested to see whether there's whether we're keeping up staff-wise with those massive growth, because otherwise wellness, I think, is going to go down. Thank you very much, Chair.
And then there's I'm going to, let me deal with these two questions first, and then there are two other that I see. Restorative justice, as you say, and as I understand our justice system is that we do truly want to emphasize restorative as well as elements of punitive justice, but that is a tightrope, and in terms of is a balancing act. But certainly we as you point out, and in generic terms, I would certainly support empathy for both victim and perpetrator and how to take that forward. Now, alcohol and substance abuse. I want to be upfront and say that's not a problem only at Stellenbosch University. It's a problem at university campuses countrywide, continentally, and globally, as I've found in my interactions with a number of university leaders. And it's a difficult issue to deal with. We have, for example, we've banned the alcohol use in residences. Special permission needs to be obtained for certain events, but we don't have control over the sale of alcohol in town, at outlets in town. So we use the words, we need to create a responsible drinking culture. Now, is it possible to do that? Well, we need to investigate that. I think a blunt approach such as saying, well, prohibition of alcohol and or let's raise the legal drinking age to 21 as it is in the States. Well, I've certainly experienced firsthand that raising the legal drinking age is extremely ineffective. That does not work. All young, well, let me qualify, not all, many young people in the United States have fake IDs with which they, or at least the university colleges. So that doesn't, so I'm also part of, or I'm actually chair of the board of Higher Health. Higher Health is an arm of University of South Africa that looks after the health services for tertiary higher education sector, and they've got a very strong program in this regard as well. So I don't think as Stellenbosch University we need to reinvent the wheel. we need to follow best practices as it's done in the worldwide and see what we can learn from that. So in terms of well, it's a deeply philosophical question that Professor Quinault asked. Unfortunately, he doesn't offer, he criticizes, but he didn't offer any suggestions. So because universities are age-old institutions, they're more than 1,000 years old, they are structured across the world traditionally as hierarchical, siloed type institutions. And that is the way many of them are put up, are organized. And attempts like what we've done with a number of things more recently, such as the School for Data Science and Computational Thinking, the School for Climate Studies, our transformation initiatives, finance, HR, those are examples of cross-cutting. So you've got silos, and then you've got cross-cutting type structures. And that's an example of a matrix organization. Now, we know that that's complex. It's very difficult in a large organization, 33,000 students, under postgraduate, 4,000 employees, support staff and academics. Hierarchy versus matrix, and it's the tension between those two. I would certainly agree with beauty and benefit in simplicity. And as I tried to state I thought that is what we actually achieved in the ICBC in our response to the pandemic, is creating a flatter structure. So this triple CR is what I would counter to Prof. Quinault, is also such a flatter structure that would enable these recommendations to be looked at in more detail. But as I also stated very clearly, it's parallel process. That's not the be-all and end-all of it. Just putting in some more bureaucratic measures and let's measure it. It's also the hearts and minds of people by going much deeper and getting a lot more of us owning this and going forward and talking about it. So it's a parallel structure at all different levels. I do want to remind Prof. Quinault as well, yes, there's beauty and benefit in simplicity, but it was also mentioned by a very prominent investigative journalist, H.L. Mencken, well known in the United States in the early 1920s, who said, for every complex problem, there's an answer that's easy, simple, and wrong. These are difficult issues that require different ways and many multiple interventions. There's not a simplistic way of looking at this. In terms of applications and the bugbear is why we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough academics, we don't have enough support staff. I think I almost feel like I want to hand over to Prof. Stan here. Stan, do you want to come in here on your... No, he says no. He says no, because he's been showing a slide that in terms of the distribution of university funds to the support staff and the different faculties, that has really remained constant in terms of support staff, the percentage, the proportion of the distribution over the last number of years. There has not been a disproportionate allocation of funds. So, of course, there can be cases made in terms, and there's certainly been no decrease in the number of employees at this university or academics at this university over the last number of years. So, Stan.
I can say something about that, Chair.
Thank you for helping me.
Well, if there's a mic here. We get more applications, but we don't necessarily have more students who arrive at the university. So that's been largely constant for the last 5 years. So strong growth before the last 5 years, but constant over the last 5 years. The Second thing to note is in our budget, we are quite careful to watch the proportion of the remuneration budget within the integrated budget. And that has not declined. So that means the amount that we spend per staff for the total staff has not declined within the budget. Now, that doesn't tell you exactly what the headcount is, because there's a question of post levels and there's churn, and it isn't exactly structured in the same way in faculties and in the past divisions, but it's a guidepost to you that somehow the staff part of the university's budget isn't falling behind. Within the division between faculties and the past divisions also, there has been no change in the proportion. So the proportion of the total budget that goes to the support services is roughly the same today as 8 years ago, and it's the same with the faculties. So the university has maintains proportionality in these allocations over time. It's a slow-moving budget, and it does mean, Chair, that where there is growth in the institution, it's not where we stand today is not an institution that is distorted compared to the resource allocation of 8 years ago.
Thank you. Past 12. So I'm going to ask that the two questions from the audience, that they be addressed to me afterwards. I will take it offline, and I commit to that we'll answer them, and we'll provide the answers to you all by email or by would that be fine? Okay, good. So let's go on to the lucky draw. How are we going to do that? Talk to me. Okay. It's Francois Potser, number 1. And number 2 is Elvis Erison. Number 3, Emmanuel Obasa. Hazel Alexander. Number 5, Gail September. That's it. Dr. Leslie from the way. Jaco Volsken. And Russian Nayaga. Dosibuzo Maklava. Edwardine Marais, and 10. Congratulations to all of you. And again, can I just point out the shoes? All right. Thank you very much.